Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. The other day I was shopping with my friend Kathy and we were looking at the brand new stamps at Joann Fabrics, and I saw these really pretty layering stamps from Hero Arts. First I saw these waves and I thought, oh, that's so cool. I've always wanted to try those landscape layering stamps, and I'm like, well, if I get these, then, oh, I need to get the palm tree set to go with it, and then, oh, I had to get these clouds to go with it too. And then I said, you know, this is ridiculous because I could just paint a scene with less fuss in less time than using all those stamps. And then I thought, what an awesome video idea that would be to compare how fast I could stamp a tropical beach card versus paint a tropical beach card. So that's what we're going to do in today's video. We are going to put painting versus stamping and see which one turns out better and faster. And what I'd like you to do, just for fun, is to pause the video and in the comments down below, tell me what one you think is going to be faster. Is it going to be faster to paint this or stamp it, or will it be a tie? I think it would be a lot of fun to see what you guys think before we start the video. And just be fair and do leave that comment if you're going to predict before you watch the video, just to keep it fair and fun for everyone. So without further ado, let's go to the table and watch side by side which one is faster. Let's go. Okay, I want to start off by letting you know that I have already selected the colors, the inks that I'm going to use for the stamping project, and I have cut my masks already for that project. I want it to be really fair because I'm making my card first stamping, and then I'm painting the stamped card as my reference. So I figured that would be the fairest way to approach this. Now, the time is sped up 2 times, so you're going to watch this twice as fast as it happened in real life, and you can notice that already the painting version has a slight lead. I've started off with a graded wash in the sky using some ultramarine blue and some phthalo blue. And on the stamp side, I have stamped down the base layer of the palm tree, and I'm stamping down the palm tree trunk as well. So with the stamped card, I need to work front to back. I need to work with the object that's closest, which is a palm tree, and then I'll be working backwards in the sky and water. So a couple different approaches. Now on the watercolor side, I am blotting out my clouds by using a scrunched up paper towel to lift off some puffy white clouds. Now if I had left my sky like this, we could start with the water and I definitely would have painted the card faster. But because I wanted this to reflect what I was doing in the card, I decided I would add some pink, yellow and purple shading and coloring to the clouds because I really wanted to be fair and do as close as I could to the stamped image. Now you'll see that when I get to the cloud stamping section on my my stamped card. I really like how these clouds came out, I have to say. I used a little bit of magenta paint and just kind of thinned it down and added that into the white cloud area, and if it didn't want to blend, I'd just go in with a wet brush and kind of help it along a little bit. Now you can see on the stamped side, I'm adding my layers on top of the tree trunk and on top of the leaves. So these layering stamps have, you know, a base layer and then your detail layer that you do usually a little bit darker. And I'm using a marker on the stamped card to add some more shadow and to kind of fix the area where it wasn't perfectly lined up. But that's totally fine. That's how it goes with those layering stamps in me. Now the contraption I'm using to stamp with is actually a jewel CD case or DVD case. It's a stamp positioner that a friend made for me. It's actually Jody from Hallmark Scrapbook. She made this for me like many years ago, and everyone was telling me I needed a stamp positioner to do the layering stamps, so I remembered that I had that, and that's what I'm using. I'm adding some yellow to the clouds on the watercolor side just to give it that that glow that you get when the sun's either rising or setting. I thought it would be really pretty to get that bounced light. And over on the stamp side, I'm just kind of putting my cloud stamps down on the card and trying to figure out exactly where I want them to be. I did a little bit of prep, like I tried stamping out a couple different ways before I started recording, and I quickly realized that takes a lot more planning than I anticipated when I'm working with the layering stamps. And once I got them just right, then I closed the lid on my makeshift stamp platform and started stamping those. And you can see that my sky is going pretty quickly over on the watercolor side. The watercolor side's a little over a minute faster so far than the stamp side. And it's it's going pretty well. I'm actually surprised at how long I'm spending on the sky there. So I'm putting a mask on the stamped card over the palm tree fronds and the tree trunk, so that way when I stamp my clouds and I stamp my water and all of that, I don't have to worry about potentially stamping on top of my palm tree. Now I'm inking up the clouds with pink ink, and that will be the base layer for my clouds. And over on the painted side, I am painting some shadows and details on my clouds with a mixture of ultramarine blue and the magenta color that I used originally. So I'm getting kind of a light purpley shading. Now I wanted to put some shading detail on the stamped clouds, so I am going to position the detail layer on top of my puffy clouds. You can see I'm doing it there. The reason my head's in the way is because you need to line up the clouds perfectly, and so I have to look straight down on those stamps to get them to be remotely lined up. Now they're not perfect. They're far from perfect, friends, but I'm not so worried about my cards being perfect, my stamp cards being perfect, because I want them to look homemade. I don't want them to look like I went to the Dollar Tree and bought a pre-printed card. You know, I want them to look, artisan, shall we say. Artisan, I like that. So after I got my stamps lined up and I closed the lid on my stamp positioner, I'm inking them up with a very light blue ink. I believe it is, oh gosh, I forgot the name of it, Soft Sky or something like that in Memento. And when you stamp the blue over the pink, it gives you a very soft lavender look. And I thought that looked really nice, and it was really subtle. So now over on the watercolor side, I'm adding some water into the area where I want my, my water to be, not right up at the horizon because I was afraid I might bleed and feather up into the sky. And then I'm using a flat brush to put in some dark Prussian blue watercolor paint. I'm trying to keep that horizon line as neat and tidy as I can. And over on the stamp side, I'm putting masks over my clouds so that when I start to ink my sky, I'm not going to have to worry about trying to stay around them. Now on the painted side, I am adding some ultramarine blue, I'm adding some phthalo blue, I'm filling in my water, just trying to get a bunch of different shades, kind of like I'll be stamping in a moment on the stamped card side. So far, our stamping has fallen about 1.5 minutes behind our painting, but honestly, I'm really having a fun time with both of these. I added a little bit of yellow, the same yellow I used in the sky on the watercolor side, into my water to give it that beautiful oceany blue green look, and I'm also adding some of the purples from the sky into the water as well, since the water does reflect the sky. So now I have, on the stamp side, I have stamped my first layer of water, which I did in a really pale kind of aqua blue, and now I'm adding my medium layer. Now I am cleaning my stamps in between layers, so otherwise I'd have a huge mess and I wouldn't be able to, it would be such a pain to put everything away. I am cleaning my stamps in between and putting them back on the reference sheets, which I recommend if you're doing these layering stamps so you don't lose track of any of them. I'm using a medium turquoise for the next layer on my my card, which I think that looks so satisfying when you start to see that water get layered up. And over on the watercolor side, I'm using some yellow ochre and some burnt sienna in the sand area, just to kind of make it look kind of like sand that might have some divots and some wetness here and there. And I had to tweak it a little bit because the yellow ochre from the artsy set that I used, that's the watercolors that I used, was very bright. And then I'm blotting it a bit to give it a little bit of texture and to tone down the color a bit. So now I'm putting a mask on the stamped side to cover up the water, and I've cut my mask a little bit deeper than what the stamped image is because I wanted it to have a white ridge at the bottom of the water, kind of like waves rolling onto the sand. At least that's what I was thinking of. So I made my mask a little bit wider than the actual water area. And I've got a sentiment that I want to use on this card in the sand. It looks like it says hello, and it looks like somebody has carved it in the sand with a stick, and I'm just trying to see how it's going to line up on my stamp positioner. And I realized I needed it up a little bit higher, and I thought I ought to check under my mask and see what it looked like, and I realized that that band of white was just too thick. So I slid my mask up a little bit, and then I decided to ink over that to kind of turn that into some more sand because it just didn't look quite right. And don't be afraid to adjust when you're crafting. If something doesn't look right, just try to fix it. You don't need to start all over. I know a lot of people would have probably started this card over several times in the process, but I always like to see, what I can, how I can salvage it. And I figure if I feel like it's ruined anyway, then what do I got to lose? I might as well keep charging ahead. And I stamped that in a darker brown, and then I used some of that darker brown to ink over the sand there, and I like that effect much better. And I just left a little rim of the white to give it the seafoam look. Making sure my mask is down really well, and I'm repositioning that mask so it covers right at the horizon line, which, come to think of it, I don't think I really had to mask off the water because I'm going to be inking blue. Now, I started off using one of the small ink pads that I used for the water, but it wasn't really enough ink to fill that brush, and it was going to take me a lot longer than using a larger ink pad. So I grabbed my tumbled glass distress ink and I decided to use that for my sky. And over on the watercolor side, I have painted in the trunk and coconuts on the palm tree, and I'm painting in the palm fronds. And I'm just using a variety of shades of green, kind of green and green mixed with yellow and green mixed with blue, just to get a nice variety like I had in the stamped card, which you'll see again when I remove the masks. So I'm just using this large brush. It's one of the makeup style brushes to add some blue into the sky and kind of fill that in so it's not just white. That's why I had to stamp those clouds in colors that contrasted a little bit, because I knew I was going to ink some blue and I wanted it to stand out. So now I'm going to remove my masks and we can see what we have so far on the stamped card. I kind of wish I went a little darker with my clouds now that I see everything together. I originally had chose the shadow ink that was a bit darker, but I thought it was a little too much, so I went with the lighter tones. But it can be really hard to tell until you've got everything stamped together. Now I'm using a marker on the stamped card to fill in some of the tree trunks to make it look a little bit nicer, and I'm also adding a shadow next to the palm tree and also right under the sea foam to give it a little bit of dimension. And you can see I did that same thing next to the palm tree with watercolor paint. I am also adding in some detail on the holo just to darken it up a little bit and give it a little bit more prominence so it won't get lost. So you kind of have to make those little decisions as you go. What does my picture need? Do I need to darken this? I wouldn't go in and try to darken the clouds on the stamped one at this stage of the game, but definitely I could do the sand or something like that. Now, as a final stamped touch on the stamped card, I wanted to add some birds. So I'm just trying to figure out where I want them by placing the clear stamp right on the card and moving it around and fussing with it till I get it right. And then I'm going to ink that up in some nice opaque black ink. I think I ended up using pigment ink for that. And over on the watercolor side, I am adding some darker shadows in the palm fronds. I'm using a mixture of Prussian blue and the sap green that I was using in the palm fronds originally to give it a nice, cool, dark shadow in there. So I try to mix from colors I've used already as much as possible to create harmony and unity throughout the picture. Now, while on the stamp side, I am drying it really well because I need to trim it. My stamps were sized for an A2 card, so the stamped card is actually a bit smaller. The painted card is 5 by 7, and the stamped card is going to end up being a 4 1/4 by 5.5 card. And the reason for that is the width of the water layer. That kind of had to be the width of the card size, just because I don't know if I was stitching several of those together, I don't think I would have gotten a very good result, and that would have taken a lot longer, and it really wouldn't have been a fair comparison, I don't think. So now I'm just figuring out how I want to mat it. Now, I did pick a few colors to begin with and just lay them on a table so I wouldn't have to hem and haw and add time to the card that way, because I was trying to just keep it to hands-on time and be as fair as possible comparing the two. So I matted that on some kind of celery green cardstock, and then I was also trying it on blue just to see if I liked that better. And I decided that I wanted both the green and the blue to be represented in my card. So I'm mounting the stamped panel onto some celery green cardstock, and then I'm going to do another mat with the turquoise blue because I thought those colors looked so good because of the color in the water. Now, over on the watercolor side, I'm giving it a final dry before I decide whether or not I want to add birds. Since I did it to the stamped card, I figure I better do it to the painted card as well. And so I am doing that. I just mixed up a kind of blackish color with the colors I'd already been using. And I have to say, I do not like the painted birds. I like the stamped birds a lot. I think they look really great and add quite a bit to the card, but the painted ones, I wish I hadn't have done that. But hey, it's just a card. I'll send it off. No one will care. It'll be just fine. Now because I trimmed my stamped card image a little weirdly, it doesn't center perfectly on my card with the matting layer, I decided I would stamp some birds onto the matte layer to kind of carry the design over and then make it work on my card base. And sometimes that's how it rolls, you know, something gets cut not quite right and you gotta improvise. And rather than redoing a card, which at this stage of the game ain't gonna happen, I decided I would stamp on this mat and I would add the birds kind of coming in from one side of the turquoise mat and flying off the top edge, kind of carrying that diagonal bird flying, what do you call it, migratory pattern. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. That's what I do. You can see from the cards that I just make stuff up as I'm going. And now I'm going to adhere everything onto the card base. So I actually really like the way the stamped card came together, because it's kind of an odd little arrangement of cardstocks there, like the way I offset them, but I really like it. I think it's unusual and kind of fun. And now we're just about to cross the finish line, and you can see the painted card actually only was about 3.5 minutes quicker than the stamped card. I thought there was going to be a bigger difference than that. So, how is your prediction? Did you predict that the stamping video would take longer or the painting one? They were really fun to make, and I do think those stamps are pretty versatile, and I'll enjoy making a bunch of other cards with them, but there is something no fuss, no muss, and freeing about doing a painted card. Now, cleanup from these projects, it took me 7 minutes to pick up after the stamped one. It only took me 1 minute and 40 seconds to pick up after the painting project. Setup wise, it only took me 2 minutes to set up for the painting project, and it took me, you don't even want to know, because I had to test out the stamps and I had to test out colors, and I didn't include that in the actual card making video. So to prep to do that stamped card took me probably about 45 minutes. So definitely start to finish, if you include cleanup and setup, it is much faster for me to paint a card. But if you're a more practiced stamper, especially with those layering stamps, you may find that you're faster with the stamps. I think it's a lot of fun to challenge our preconceived notions and just make stuff. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, or if you just want to say hello. I love that too. So until next time, guys, happy crafting.